Listen to a conversation between a student and his drama professor.
Hi, Robert. So, how's your paper going?
Pretty well. It's a lot of work, but I'm getting into it, so I don't mind. I'll probably have some questions for you in the next week or so.
Okay. Glad to hear you're progressing so well.
There was something you said at the end of the lecture on Tuesday, something about there not really being any original plays.
There's no such thing as an original play. Yes, that's the direct quote from Charles Mee.
Mee. That's with two E's, right?
Yep, M-E-E. You'll probably be hearing a lot about him. He's becoming a pretty famous playwright.
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about his quote. I mean, there must be some original plays out there.
I'll grant that he's overstating things somewhat. But the theater does have a long tradition of borrowing. Take Shakespeare. Like most writers of his day, he borrowed plots from other sources unabashedly. And the ancient Greeks, all the plays they wrote were based on earlier plays, poems, and myths.
And borrowing applies to plays being written nowadays, too?
Well, to some extent, yes. Me, for example, he's made a career out of remaking plays, one of which we'll be studying soon. It's called Full Circle, and me based it on an earlier play by a German playwright.
Oh, Full Circle. Wasn't that based on the Caucasian chalk circle?
That's right.
I remember hearing about that play from my acting coach.
Okay, well, the Caucasian chalk circle was based on a play by yet another German playwright, someone who was fascinated by the ancient literatures of China, India, and Persia. And many of his works were adapted from those literatures, including his version of the chalk circle, which was based on an early Chinese play.
So this Full Circle play by Charles Mee, the one we're going to study, it's like the third or fourth remake. Wow. And we complain that Hollywood keeps making the same movies over and over again.
Well, part of what Mee's trying to do is drive home the point that, one, theater's always a collaborative effort.
Well, yeah, the playwright, the director, the actors, people have to work together to produce a play.
Yes, of course, but Mee means historically. The dramatic literature of early periods is hugely influential in shaping later dramatic works.
So it's like when a playwright bases a play on a previous playwright's theme or message. It's like they're talking to each other, collaborating. Just not at the same time, right?
Exactly. And the second point Mee's trying to make, I think, is that it's legitimate to retell an old story in a new way, in a way that's more in line with contemporary concerns. So when playwrights reinvent or update an earlier play, it shouldn't be construed as a lack of imagination or an artistic failure.
Why does the man go to see the professor? Listen to a conversation between a student and his creative writing professor.
John, listen, I can clearly see that you put a lot of time into your response paper.
I did. It took me forever. I rewrote it a dozen times.
And your hard work shows. Unfortunately, it's a week late.
I know. Sorry. I just got a little behind, sports and homework. But I'm on top of things now.
Glad to hear it. Now, as for our meeting today, I like to talk to all of my creative writing students one-on-one at least once during the term and see how they're doing.
I think I'm doing okay. Busy, but other than that...
Well, I've found through the years that some of my assignments can be pretty tough for first-year students like yourself. Like the response paper you just did. The explication of a Pablo Neruda poem. By the way, why did you choose The Lemon? It's an unusual choice.
It was my favorite in a book of Neruda's poems. All the poems are about everyday objects and, simple pleasures.
Right. Elemental Odes, one of my favorites.
I liked how Neruda took things like fruit and vegetables and socks and used metaphors and similes to describe them as these wonderful, mysterious things. Like in The Lemon, he describes a lemon falling to earth from the stars. And he compares a slice of lemon to a stained glass window. It's so original.
Beautiful images, aren't they? Neruda didn't win the Nobel Prize for Literature by accident.
No, he didn't.
Now, as you know, the paper was only the first half of the assignment, and I'm concerned about your ability to complete the second part on time, considering how much time the first part took you.
Actually, I finished it just before I came here.
Excellent.
It was tricky, too. Having to write a poem inspired by the lemon, but in a completely different style.
Right.
In order to do that, I really had to study Neruda's style and read a lot of his stuff, which was great, but The lemon is free verse. So to do the assignment, I decided to use a strict meter, iambic pentameter, to be as different as possible.
So each line of your poem has 10 syllables, and every other syllable is stressed. Interesting choice. Iambic pentameter is certainly different from free verse.
It was hard for me, though, because usually when I write a poem, I choose my own topic, and I just write. I don't worry about counting syllables or anything. So, I'm kind of hoping we won't have more assignments like this.
Sorry to disappoint you, but these assignments are designed to get you out of your comfort zone, to get you reading and writing a wide variety of poetic styles.
What do the speakers mainly discuss?
Listen to part of a conversation between a student and an employee at the campus store.
I like those ceramic coffee mugs you have on display at the other end of the store. Were they made by students?
Oh, we only use certain suppliers, wholesalers who've been selected by the store manager.
Do you ever sell things made by students?
We use preferred vendors only because, if we said yes to one student, we'd have to say yes to any student who asks. And the store's only so big.
That's too bad, because I make these pretty ceramic bowls. I design them myself. I'm a studio art major. Anyway, I was hoping I could sell them here. You see, I'm taking Art 202, Marketing Your Art, and for my final project, I need to find a way to sell my own artwork.
What about selling online? A lot of art and crafts are marketed that way.
I really don't have the computer skills or the time to manage a website.
What about the Emporium? You know, that gift shop downtown. I've seen items by local artists there.
The Emporium buys directly from artists?
Well, they sell items on consignment.
Consignment. I think my professor mentioned that.
Yeah, you give them some items to sell on your behalf, and then you and the store split the purchase price. But they wouldn't pay you anything up front if that's what you want. And you might need to provide your own display case.
Oh, I already have a display case, a portable one with 3 shelves. But aren't there shops that would, just buy stuff from me outright? Because if not enough bowls are sold, how would I recoup the cost of my materials? They're not cheap, and neither was the case.
All the stores around here that sell craft items are small and independently owned, like the Emporium. For them, selling on consignment lowers their risk. They don't get stuck with unsold items. They can return them to the owner. You just have to make sure you set a retail price high enough to make it worth your while. But you're right, consignment isn't for everyone. What about the spring craft fair? You know, that outdoor market that's held on Saturdays? Plenty of local people sell their stuff there. Ceramics, jewelry, decorative items. The vendor fee is nominal, I believe.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing that last year. All those tables lined up in that vacant lawn on Main Street, right?
Right. Since the craft fair's only a few blocks from campus, it seems like a good place for students to sell things.
Do you know how it works?
I think you just rent a space and set up a table to display your bowls on. You'd set the prices and keep all the profits.
Seems doable. But, I don't have a car to haul everything down there.
You could take the campus bus. It goes into town on weekends.
True. But I'd also have to sit there all day when I should be in the library or the studio. I don't know. I suppose I could do my reading assignments between customers.
Why does the woman go to talk to the man? Listen to part of a conversation between a student and her biology professor.
So, the assignment is to reproduce one of the animal camouflage experiments we read about in our textbook. Which experiment did you pick?
Well, I was wondering if I could try to reproduce an experiment that's kind of the opposite of what was discussed in the textbook.
So, instead of how and why an animal might hide itself, you want to do something about why an animal might want to be seen? Tell me more.
Well, I got the idea from one of the journals you said we should look at. It's an experiment about, they called them eye spots in the article.
Eye spots, sure. The patterns on the wings of moths and butterflies that are generally believed to scare off predators because they look like big eyes?
Yeah, except the article was about an experiment that disputes that theory.
Well, we know that the markings do scare the birds, but the idea that the spots look like eyes is, well, that's just a commonly held belief.
So that's not even based on research?
Well, this whole idea of moth or butterfly markings being scary because they look like eyes rests on how we imagine that their predators, like birds, perceive the markings. And we can never really know that. All we can do is observe bird behavior. But tell me more about the experiment.
Okay, so the experiment looked at the shapes of the markings on moth wings. The researchers wanted to know if the markings that were round or eye-shaped were more effective at deterring predators than square or rectangular markings.
Okay.
Yeah, so they attached food to paper models of moths with different shaped marks drawn on the wings to see how birds reacted. And what's interesting is they realized that the round marks were not more effective at scaring birds than other shapes.
Were they less effective?
No, they were about the same. But what researchers did determine is that larger markings are more effective than smaller markings at scaring off prey. They called this phenomenon visual loudness.
Visual loudness, huh? Well, I guess it's not all that shocking if you think about it.
So anyway, is it okay? Can I repeat this experiment and write about it?
Yes, I think that'll work. The problem I foresee is, well, where? This is an urban campus. You'll have a hard time finding a good place to set up the experiment.
Oh, I wasn't planning on doing it on campus. I'm going home for spring break, and my family lives in the country, far from the nearest city. I can set it up in the backyard.
Good idea. Except 1 week is not a lot of time, so you'll need to make some adjustments to have enough data. I'd set up the experiment near a bird feeder and get in as much observation time as you can.
Why does the student talk Listen with the to part of a professor? conversation between a student and her biology professor.
So, the assignment is to reproduce one of the animal camouflage experiments.
Why does the student talk with the professor?
Listen to a conversation between a student and the director of the Student Activities Center.
Hello, Jack. Is everything set for the trip this Saturday?
Everything's ready. 15 people have signed up. Our train gets into New York City at noon, which leaves plenty of time to get downtown to the art gallery for the reception.
It's great you could organize this. What an honor, having a painting by one of our students in that exhibit.
Yeah, my roommate's so modest. If we weren't such good friends, I'd have never realized his work was being exhibited. So, since I was going anyway, for the opening and all, I figured I might as well make a student event out of it. Working here at the Student Activities Center has made me realize how popular our activities are. I figured there'd be interest in it.
Well, you've done a super job organizing everything. Those posters look great, and they went up in no time.
Thanks, and I'm glad you could approve the funding for us.
My pleasure. By the way, how are you getting to the gallery from the train station?
Well, there are buses that run downtown.
Right. You grew up in New York City, didn't you?
Yeah, but the bus? Well, that's kind of what I wanted to talk to you about.
Yes?
I realized it's last minute, but, well, the weather for Saturday is supposed to be really nice, sunny, warm. It'd be a great opportunity to walk the High Line.
The what?
Haven't you... Oh, I guess not everyone's heard of it. It's this amazing... It's like this park in the sky.
A park in the sky?
Yeah. Well, see, there was this old train line. You know, one of those elevated lines, the kind that run high above the streets?
Okay.
Well, this one was used for freight, not passengers.
Uh-huh.
But when it got cheaper to move freight by trucks, they stopped using it. It was abandoned for a long time. And then, a few years back, the city agreed to turn the tracks and surrounding area into a park. It's not very wide, but it's over a mile long. And it goes from the train station all the way downtown near the gallery. I've walked it before. It's really cool. There's grass and flowers everywhere. And since you're high up, you get these great views of the city.
Sounds wonderful, but have you considered not everybody might be interested in walking that far? They might prefer the bus.
Couldn't we just split up? You know, have some of us walk and the others take the bus?
But remember, Jack, the poster advertises you as the tour leader. Not everybody's as adventurous about getting around the city. You'd need to find someone to accompany people on the bus. Then you'd take the walkers.
Yeah, but who? The trip's in 2 days.
Well, I did my graduate work in New York. Of course, it was a while ago, but I still know how to get around the city.
Yeah?
And I'd love to see that exhibit.
You'd go? Oh, that'd be great.
Why does the student Listen go to to a see the woman? conversation between a student. Why does the Listen to a conversation between a student and a political science professor.
I'm not sure if you know, but I was elected to student government this year.
Oh, congratulations. I was in student government myself as an undergraduate. It taught me a lot about the political process. In fact, the experience solved my problem of what to do with my life. It really cemented my interest in becoming a political scientist.
Cool. Anyway, the reason I came by is we're getting ready to conduct a straw poll on campus. Hold an informal vote since the general election's just a couple months away. We want to get a feel for the student body's political leanings, like who students are planning to vote for, which political party people identify with, that sort of thing.
Oh, sure. I helped students run a straw poll once, years ago. It was a lot of work, mostly because we used paper ballots and stayed up all night counting them. But if you use computers...
Yeah, we're creating a website for it where students will be able to vote online. And we're looking for a faculty advisor to help, actually. I was hoping you might be interested.
Oh, I'm flattered, John, but my schedule is so jammed. I'm teaching 2 seminars, your intro course, finishing up my research. But what about Professor Klein? She's new in our department. Plus, she's a whiz with computers.
Okay, I'll ask her.
So, have you decided on a topic for your term paper yet?
Not really.
Well, why not write about your straw poll? Since the paper's not due till after the election, you could include your results. Maybe compare them with the real election results.
But would that be enough? I mean, just comparing numbers?
Well, no, you'd need to provide some analysis, too. But I was thinking, there's a couple of local ballot questions this year. Referenda that voters can either support or not support.
Right, there's one on whether to ban smoking in restaurants, and another one, I think it's whether to spend tax dollars for a new sports arena in the city.
Oh, okay, here's an idea. In regular elections, the vast majority of voters ignore referenda. They vote for their favorite candidates, but avoid ballot questions. We believe it's because voters aren't familiar with the questions or don't understand them. But actively educating people on ballot questions right before they vote can improve referendum participation rates.
In that case, maybe we could have our straw poll website provide information on the ballot questions, like how each proposal would affect students.
Exactly. And when you write your paper, you could compare the students' referendum voting rate to the general public's and include your own analysis of the results. Plus, there's plenty of published research on referendum voting behavior.
Thanks, Professor Miller. I had no idea the straw poll could actually help me in my coursework.
Why does the man go to see the professor? Listen to a conversation between a student and his professor.
This is not what I had in mind when I assigned a film review.
It isn't?
No, what you wrote is a synopsis, a detailed summary of the movie, but it's not a review.
It's not? I guess I'm a little confused, 'cause isn't that what a film review does, describe the film?
Sure, in part, but a good review has to do more. But this is probably not your fault. I'm starting to think that I should have explained the assignment better because, well, I got a lot of summaries and very few reviews.
So it wasn't only me?
Hardly. I just assumed that everyone would know what to do.
So, what else is a review supposed to do?
Well, it should also analyze the film, discuss its strengths and weaknesses, maybe compare it to other movies, even mention why the reviewer did or didn't like it.
You mean it should have been more personal?
For starters. Or maybe subjective is a better word than personal. Yes, it should have been more subjective.
Maybe I could rewrite it?
Well, I don't know about rewriting it. Too many people seem to have missed the point. I think I may have to forego evaluating this one. Instead, maybe we'll just devote a class to discussing what it takes to write a good film review, or Or maybe, I have a colleague who writes film reviews for the local paper. Maybe I could ask her to come to class and describe what she does, and then have everyone rewrite their reviews.
So she would talk about what a film review should be like so we'd know what to do.
Well, more than that. A professional film reviewer gets to see movies sometimes before they're even released. They get advanced copies, usually a video or DVD, to watch at home, or they go to a movie as soon as it opens in the theaters.
Seeing it on the big screen in a theater, doesn't that affect the experience?
Of course. Having other people there can affect the review, too. So, for the next assignment, I might ask everyone to review one of the films the film club shows every weekend at the theater on campus. There's no admission charge, they're free to students, and the movies are shown on Friday and Saturday nights, plus Sunday afternoon, so everyone should be able to see one. Yeah, that should work.
But for this time, will we have to rewrite our reviews?
Well, let's take it one thing at a time. Let me talk to my colleague.
Why does the student go to the professor's office? Listen to part of a conversation between a student and her history professor.
So I definitely want to write my term paper on American journalism in the 18th century. That old copy of the New York Daily Gazette you showed us, the one printed from the library's microfilm, just seeing a newspaper that was published in 1789, that was really cool.
Yes, reading old newspapers can be a powerful experience, especially to a budding historian like yourself. As a resource for scholars and researchers, I don't think any form of publication really captures the day-to-day life of a community better than a local newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, I knew that the number of newspapers exploded in the 18th century, but I figured they all deteriorated before the technology was invented to preserve them, or, make copies.
Well, actually, before the mid-1800s, newspapers were printed on fairly sturdy paper, made from cotton fibers. Those that survived are in surprisingly good shape.
Are there many more copies of the Gazette on microfilm?
Yeah, we've got a great microfilm library on campus. You'll find it invaluable, I'm sure, as you research your paper. But also talk to the librarians because they're creating an online archive of their microfilm collection. I'm not sure of the project's status, but if it's done, it'll probably save you time. So, 18th century journalism. You must realize that topic's too broad for this assignment.
I do. So one idea I had was like looking at an important world event, like maybe the French Revolution of 1789, since we just finished a unit on it. The readings you had given us were incredibly vivid. I loved them. But they were translations of French writers, historians. So I thought it'd be interesting to pick the Gazette and one other American newspaper to see how each covered the revolution, how the journalists reported it from America's perspective.
Interesting approach. But remember, I'll be grading your paper based on the details you include, and at some point in your paper, you'll want to focus on a particular event of the revolution, like maybe the storming of the Bastille prison.
How about the formation of the French National Constituent Assembly?
Sure, that would work.
And since I'm going to look at newspapers from two cities, I could read the editorials, the opinion pieces, to find out what each community thought about the National Assembly.
Okay, but, I once attended a history conference where a professor presented a paper on the American press and the French Revolution. She was discussing the development of democratic ideals here and in France at the time. But she also pointed out that using old newspapers as primary sources, to beware that they reflected the values of only a segment of society, and should not be used to draw conclusions about all Americans. I don't think I held on to her paper, but it was subsequently published, so you'll have no trouble tracking it down on the internet. Let me give you her name.
What is the conversation mainly about? Listen to a conversation between a student and her economics professor.
excellent presentation you made at the end of class yesterday.
Oh, thanks.
I'm so glad you volunteered to present first, starting out by outlining what you were going to say, then at the end summarizing the key points. It was a very effective way of getting your points across.
I'm glad you think so. I was afraid it might come across as too formal.
Not at all. In fact, I think it's a great approach in general for these presentations. So I hope the others were taking note. And the economic model you discussed, build, operate, transfer, I think everyone was quite interested.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. If governments allow private companies to build public works, like a power plant, and then operate it for a decade or two before transferring ownership to the government, everyone benefits.
Yes, the private companies make a profit. The public gets a needed infrastructure.
And all without the government having to spend any money up front, which is amazing.
Right.
Anyway, as I said in my presentation, this model's being used in Turkey right now, and you said when you handed out that brochure in class last week about the university's Global Enrichment Initiative, you said one of the countries involved in that is Turkey.
Yes, that's right.
So I wanted to see if there's a chance the university sends 15 students overseas to study.
15 students per country. 15 for Turkey, 15 for Brazil, 15 for Russia. We've got a total of 6 countries participating next summer.
Oh.
Yeah, and you spend 6 weeks in whichever country you're selected for. The classroom component consists of seminars on that country's culture, politics, and economy. Most sessions are taught in English by local professors, but 2 of our faculty accompany each group and also give seminars. I'll be going to Brazil to teach a seminar on coffee next summer.
But you're an economist.
Coffee's played a central role in Brazil's economic development for over 200 years. About a third of the coffee consumed worldwide is produced in Brazil.
Oh, I had no idea. So if I applied, can students pick the country they want to go to? 'Cause if I could go to Turkey...
Well, the primary goal of the Global Enrichment Initiative is simply cultural exchange. So students who've never been overseas before can broaden their perspective. This is why on the application you're asked to indicate your first, second, and third choice countries.
I'm only interested in Turkey, though. I'm studying both Turkish and Turkish history this term.
I see.
And maybe I could learn more about how they're implementing the build, operate, transfer model there. Plus, I wouldn't want to take a spot away from someone who really wanted to go to one of the other countries.
Well, I guess you could leave the second and third choices blank.
Why does the woman go to see the professor? Listen to a conversation between a student and her sociology professor.
I'm glad you got my message and were able to make it, but where are the other members of your group? Tom and Jane?
They're actually at the library. They have a biology lab assignment that's due later this afternoon, so I'm here to represent the whole group. But, when we got your email message about being worried about our research project, we were a little confused. We thought you were excited about our idea for the project.
Well, I think it's a great research topic, but when I looked closely at your plan for accomplishing the research, I realized that your group was probably asking for some trouble.
What do you mean? I thought that, by monitoring students studying in the library, we could really get a good understanding of people's study habits and stuff.
The thing is, I think you might have a problem because of the Hawthorne effect.
The Hawthorne effect?
The Hawthorne effect is a technical term for when researchers more or less forget about a specific variable, the variable of the researchers themselves. Now, the students in the library, they're going to know that you're observing them, right? So you have to consider the effect your very presence will have on the people you're observing.
But, so you think... it's not like our observations would be a secret. The students would know exactly what we'd be doing. We'd put up a sign right outside the library.
Yes, but that's just it. When people know they're being watched, they act differently. Let me explain how the Hawthorne effect got its name and, well, you'll get the idea. See, there was a manufacturing facility called the Hawthorne plant. and researchers conducted some experiments there to see what conditions made workers the most productive.
What sort of conditions?
Well, one thing they experimented with was the lights. Were workers more productive with bright lights or dim lights? Well, here's the thing. Whatever the researchers did, the workers' productivity increased. When the lighting was improved, productivity went up. When the lighting was dimmed, productivity went up again.
That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Exactly. So, initially, the experiment was considered a failure. But then, the researchers realized that their own presence had affected the workers' productivity. The workers knew that the researchers were watching them, and with so much attention on them, the workers felt compelled to work harder.
Oh, I guess that really could be an issue with my group's research.
Yes. But I don't want to send you all back to square one. So how about you set up a meeting with your group members and discuss this? Then we can meet again and go over your ideas. And I think that we should be able to figure out a way to get around the problem.
Why does the student go to Why does the student go to see the professor? Listen to a conversation.
And I think that we should be able to figure out a way to get around